What is up, enthusiasts? It is Cedar Flags here, and welcome back to another one of my videos. Throughout the past week, I've been posting videos about my top 10 this, my top 10 that, and today we are going to go to the ultimate finale of my top 10s for the year. Today, I'm going to be counting down my top 50 roller coasters I have ever ridden. Now, keep in mind, these are not just roller coasters I rode this year. There are some rides where I have gotten to ride for the first time this year, but a lot of these I have ridden in years past. Before we get into it, I just want to let you all know this is not based on any sort of factual thing. This is all my personal opinion on the roller coasters I have ridden. And personally, I have gotten to ride 381 different roller coasters. And when it comes to new credits this year, I got 82. Last year I had a top 30, and I think that I could do a top 50 this year, so I say we get right into it because this video is going to be pretty long. This is Cedar Flags, and today we are going to count down my top 50 roller coasters of 2023. So before we get into the 50, I want to mention some honorable mentions that are barely out of my top 50 or major roller coasters that are not in the list at all. The first one is Gemini at Cedar Point. This one had a proud spot in my list last year, but unfortunately due to new credits and experiences, I had to rank it a little bit down. Up next is another Cedar Point roller coaster. This is Magnum XL 200. Now, it's actually pretty impressive this is on this list at all, because a few years ago, I used to not like this ride at all. Up next is The Voyage at Holiday World, a roller coaster that disappointed me when it came to the forces, but I have to admit, when it comes to the actual scenery, this ride is incredible. Very similar, another honorable mention is The Beast at Kings Island. This out and back wooden coaster has two separate lift hills and takes you through the Kings Island wilderness. Comet at Great Escape is a coaster I really wish I could have fit on this top 50 list, but unfortunately, there are just 50 coasters that are better. Mystic Timbers at Kings Island is another Kings Island Woody that does not make this list. I was once again a little disappointed by the forces, but am still very impressed by its layout. Finally, we go down to Florida to talk about our final one. This is Revenge of the Mummy at Universal Studios Orlando. I love this ride, everything from the theming, to the layout, to its long duration. So without further ado, let's get into the top 50. At the number 50 spot, we have Phoenix at Knoebels. This is a very traditional wooden coaster when it comes to the layout, but this ride has only buzz bars, and when you're going throughout the ride, throughout those airtime moments, you really feel those limited restraints. Throughout this finale, you are out of your seat over and over and over again, and even though you are several inches out of your seat, you are still completely safe in what is one of the most incredible airtime experiences I have been on a wooden coaster. At the number 49 spot, we go to my first overseas park and my first overseas coaster. This is Altair at Cinecittà World near Rome, Italy. This is an Intamin 10 inversion coaster with the lap bars, and I have to say personally, I love it. All 10 inversions fit very well on this ride, and personally, those final 5 inversions, those heartline rolls that flip you over and over, well, I have to say, I could not get enough of those. Coming in at the number 48 spot, we have Kumba at Busch Gardens, Tampa. Another coaster that is focused on inversions. This ride has less inversions, but does them very well. Though this ride has a very common collection of inversions, this ride goes through them at an extreme speed. Everything from the dive loop to the zero-G roll, known as the Hell Roll, to that insane Cobra Roll. For another B&M at 47, this is Fury 325 at Carowinds. Now, it is on my top 50, so I still love it. The airtime at the end is my favorite part, as it has some crazy ejector, otherwise not expected on a B&M layout like this. But, why do I have it so low? Mainly because the first half is a little more filler than I would have imagined, but overall, I think this ride is a very good fit to Carowinds and complements the layout very well. For our third B&M in a row, we go to the number 46 spot to talk about Nitro. This B&M Hyper at Six Flags Great Adventure goes out into the woods with a beautiful set of views, but there's more than just that. You have some incredible positives and negatives throughout the layout, and some very unique moments for a B&M as well, including the finale, which has some very unique hills. But we are going from B&Ms to wooden coasters for our number 45 spot, Twister at Knoebels, and this ride is a lateral machine. From start to finish, this ride has an incredible set of twists and turns. Otherwise sprinkled in with some good airtime and some good positives, laterals are this ride's main focus. It was built as a near clone of the original Mr. Twister at Ilitch Gardens, and I have to say, even though I've never gotten to ride that or its sequel, I think that this ride is incredible, and this ride has a great place at Knoebels. At the number 44 spot, we go to another 1990s wooden coaster. This is the Raven at Holiday World, and this ride has some crazy negative Gs. I personally found this to be a lot more intense and whippy than the Voyage. And this ride, even though it has a short layout, has a very nice setting as well. The trees interlocked with the layout, it looks like you are out in the wilderness away from all civilization, and it really adds to the character of this ride. For the number 43 spot, we go to Steel Curtain at Kennywood. Steel Curtain is a gem of a ride. It has the most inversions out of any coaster in America, and you could tell. The best part of this ride is that the inversions are not repetitive. A very neat zero-G stall that has an airtime hill going over it, and of course one of my favorite inversions, the Dragonfire Dive Drop, which hangs you at almost 200 feet in the air at 197 feet. For our number 42 spot, we have Lightning Rod at Dollywood. Anyways, I got to ride this in 2021, and even though it was nowhere near the strongest RMC I've been on, it was still a very fun and terrain-based ride. One of my favorite moments was the quad down. Going down those 4 airtime moments at a fast speed was definitely unforgettable. For the number 41 spot, we go to Fahrenheit at Hershey Park. It has an extremely compact inversion-based layout with some of Intamin's best forces along with it, including that first drop and the crazy negatives of the final airtime moments. But looking at the inversions, their unique profiling, and their very forceful and popping sharp elements, very much make this ride a top 50 coaster for me. For the number 40 spot, we have another Intamin coaster. This is Matsugani at Lost Island in Waterloo, Iowa. This coaster, though short, has a very punching layout. This ride starts you off with a nice hydraulic launch, leading into a very sharp top hat, and the rest of the elements providing some hang time, air time, and nice lateral and positive forces. The number 39 spot goes to Diamondback at Kings Island, a coaster I've been getting to ride since 2017, and a ride that has been fluctuating in my list. This year, I got some really good rides on it. In fact, sitting in the back row and the front row, they provide 2 completely different experiences. But very similar to all of these other B&M hypers, you get some crazy good floater airtime throughout the entire layout. And one of my favorite parts of any B&M, this ride ends off with a splashdown. For the number 38 spot, we go to Max Force at Six Flags Great America near Chicago. This ride has a very powerful launch, and I would say that it has the most powerful launch on a currently existing ride. This ride's launch hypes you up so much, and by the time you feel like the speed is starting to accelerate, that launch is already over. You have a great collection of inversions to close out the ride, and even though it's not too long, the elements it has definitely make it a great ride. For the 37th spot, we go to a Kings Island B&M. This is Orion. This is their B&M Giga Coaster, and this ride towers over that side of the park. Starting you off with a 300-foot drop into a beautiful layout with some nice floater airtime moments, and then of course that ending with a great set of ejector airtime moments. This ride has a great set of elements that I think puts it as a great place in Kings Island. Going back to Six Flags Great America, we go to look at Raging Bull. This was one of B&M's first hypercoasters when it came out in the late 90s, and this ride still has a very nice presence. Even to this day, it has some incredible airtime and some great positive forces. Though it has your traditional camelbacks like a hypercoaster should, it also has a twister layout with many helixes that provide some great positive forces. At the number 35 spot, we go up to Michigan to talk about Muskegon's very own Michigan's Adventure, to talk about Shivering Timbers. This ride goes out a half a mile into the Michigan wilderness, and it is beautiful from the beginning to the very end. And even though the layout is a very simple out and back, they spend that out and back with some very crazy elements, including some double ups, double downs, some great lateral moments, and of course, your traditional camelbacks. We're going to be talking about Hydrus at Casino Pier. This is a Gerstlauer Eurofighter, a very traditional style Eurofighter, but the reason it is this high is the profiling and the restraints. You have very simple lap bars on this ride, and that provides a lot of freedom. So, when you crest over that vertical lift and go into that drop, it is one of the sharpest, most intense drops I have ever experienced. Honestly, this might make my top 5 drops ever. It is that intense. Going from New Jersey all the way to Kansas City, we go to the Midwest to talk about the one and the only Mamba. The first drop and the Camelback right after that first drop are some of the greatest airtime moments I have experienced on a roller coaster, period. I rode this again and again just to experience that Camelback. A moment that many people point out is the finale of the ride. With the trims off or very limited, you will get some great ejector or floater airtime depending on the weather. For the number 32 spot, we are going to go to SeaWorld Orlando to look at Mako. This B&M Hyper is a very nice and unique one when it comes to its airtime moments and its finale. Its finale has a very unique set of dives and turns that are not found on many other B&Ms, but its first half is not something to ignore either. You have some incredible airtime moments where you float out of your seat for seconds at a time. Goliath at Six Flags Great America is the first of 2 Goliaths on this list, and this ride rocks. Even though it is short in its duration, the airtime that this ride has is incredible, especially that moment after the first turnaround. That moment that leads into that dive loop has got to be one of my favorite ejector moments on any RMC. It just hits so well with the rest of the ride, and speaking of that dive loop, the set of inversions that are after, like the 0G stall, these elements have you floating over the rest of the park, and you will want to get right back on once the ride is over. For the 30 spot, we have Prowler at Worlds of Fun. This is my favorite GCI wooden coaster for many reasons. One, it is super intense when it comes to its airtime, and even some of its lateral forces. The layout and the duration combined provide a very adventurous experience for a GCI. This is everything I was looking for in Mystic Timbers, but much, much more. The number 29 spot goes to Intimidator 305 at King's Dominion in Virginia. Now, keep in mind I have not gotten to ride this roller coaster in a few years, but what I remember from my rides in 2018 was that it was super intense and I grayed out on every single ride. This ride is no joke, and the moments it has do not miss whatsoever. For our number 28 spot, we go to Six Flags Over Georgia to talk about Twisted Cyclone. This 2018 RMC conversion has a short layout, but a very sweet one at that. Its airtime moments that it provides are very sharp, very intense, and the rest of the element has some very good elements as well. One I want to note about specifically is that unique turnaround after the first drop that provides 2 separate rolls. For the number 27 spot, we have Kingda Ka at Six Flags Great Adventure. This intense, intimate roller coaster wows me every single time. This ride, even though not as intense as some other hydraulic launches, it pulls you down that at an incredible speed. Once you go up that top hat, you feel like you are launching up in a space shuttle. And once you are at the top, you could basically see everything. You go down the drop into an incredible Camelback and finish your experience that you're going to want to go on right after. For our number 26 spot, we have Wicked Cyclone at Six Flags New England. Something that really impressed me about this ride was its very compact layout. This ride has basically 3 laps from a very compact plot of land led by their older wooden coaster, Cyclone. Now, this ride provides some very unique airtime experiences and even some hang time towards the end. My favorite element on this ride is personally that first outer banked turn. Now, we are officially in the top 25. We will be starting off with a new for 2023 ride for me. This is Hades 360 at Mount Olympus. Getting to ride this for the first time this year, I was absolutely wowed. Even though it has a few potholes within its layout, I would say it is very smooth, but when it comes to its actual airtime, I loved it as well. I think the thing that put this in the top 25 for me alone was its insane tunnels. After that first drop, you would go into a pitch black set of tunnels that would provide some very unique airtime moments. For our number 24 spot, we go to Carowinds once again to talk about another B&M. This time, we are talking about Intimidator. I actually do like this more than Fury for a few reasons. 1, the airtime. I love how much airtime is on this ride. And 2, its incredible forces. I mean, I was talking about the duration for reason 1, but the forces on this ride does not let up whatsoever. Outlaw Run at Silver Dollar City is the first of the big 3 on this list, and it places at my number 23. This RMC, though short in duration, provides some great elements that would not be found on many other roller coasters at all. After that first drop with an indescribable view, you have some sharp, low to the ground airtime moments sporadically throughout the ride, and this is what makes this ride rank this high for me. Now for number 22, we go to a coaster I've ridden more than any other coaster. This is Phantom's Revenge at Kennywood in Pennsylvania. This ride has a very unique layout, starting with its first drop, a nice curved one with some great positives, leading into what I would say is the most iconic part of the ride. The second drop is definitely the selling point of this ride, and it is what many people talk about. And if you're sitting in the back, you are going to get a very sharp pop of airtime. After that though, you have some very intense elements, including the finale airtime moments that I would say are very similar to Mamba's, but I would say are even more intense during some nice warm days. This ride is non-stop from start to finish. For the number 21 spot, we go to another Pennsylvania hypercoaster. This is Skyrush at Hershey Park. This ride is crazy intense, and if you're sitting in a back row seat, that first drop is going to feel crazy. Going into every single element, you will be thrown every which way until the ride is over. I personally don't mind the restraints on the ride, and I also love the placement over the pond. To kick off the 20 spot, we have Hagrid's Magical Creatures Motorbike Adventure at Islands of Adventure. This park is incredible. The theming is top-notch throughout its entire layout, and especially throughout the Harry Potter areas, this ride looks insane. I would go as far as considering this a family thrill coaster because of some of the great elements providing forces and even some of the unique elements that you would not find on many others. Now, we are going to go to the only defunct coaster on this list as of late 2023. This is Top Thrill Dragster at Cedar Point, the original. I do count this as a separate credit for many reasons, but one of them being that the difference between Top Thrill, Dragster, and Top Thrill 2 will be night and day. Talking about Dragster, this ride had a one-time launch. You would launch from 0 to 120 miles an hour. I would say, even though it is not there anymore, it is still my favorite moment on any roller coaster ever. For number 18, we go to Silver Dollar City once again to look at another big surprise. This is Powder Keg. This is an S&S, and I have to say, this ride very much surprised me. I did not hear too much about this ride, but once I sat down and launched, this ride took my breath away. With those incredible views that Outlaw Run has as well, every single airtime moment on this ride provides some great floater and ejector airtime moments at other times, and this ride's very unique layout, providing with its lift hill and its original layout, it provides a very unique experience and something that I would love to marathon if I got the opportunity. For the number 17 spot, we go back to Six Flags Over Georgia to talk about Goliath. This is my favorite B&M of all time, and I only got to ride this for the first time this September. This ride is my favorite B&M for a few reasons, one being the incredible helix, two being the airtime and more airtime. In my opinion, the finale on this ride is a greater version of Fury's. With airtime moment after airtime moment after airtime moment, it feels like it never ends, and in my favorite row, the front, I felt ejector on every single hill. The back is incredible as well with all that floater, and it has a very long layout. For the 16th spot, we go to my favorite coaster at Silver Dollar City. This is Time Traveler. This is one out of two of these coasters called an Extreme Spinner by Mach Rides. This ride has a very unique setting with a very nice terrain-based layout, but the ride's layout provides some very good elements, including that first drop. Sitting in the back has got to be one of the most intense elements I have experienced on a ride. The ride's unpredictability provides multiple rides that are unique from each other, and the inversions in airtime this layout have, along with the other factors, make this ride easily a top 20 coaster. Entering the top 15, we have my first and only Gerstlauer Infinity coaster. This is Monster at Adventureland, and when I first rode this, I realized how great hang time could be. Even though I've ridden rides with stronger hang time, this ride's hang time was so smooth, so nice, and very common. Almost every element had it, and on top of that there's some great airtime as well, and its inversion collection will pull you into this queue once again. I definitely want to see more of these Infinity coasters in the United States. Going to another Gerstlauer, but this time a Eurofighter, our number 14 spot goes to TMNT Shellraiser at Nickelodeon Universe at American Dream Mall. Very similar to Powder Keg, this ride has both a launch and a lift hill, and when you combine both of those in a ride, you better sign me up. This ride has a crazy collection of very nice inversions, and the airtime elements that this ride provides are great as well. One of my favorite moments is getting to the top of that vertical lift, looking over the skyline of New York City, and then dropping at the world's steepest angle. And I also can't forget the super intense launch that I was not expecting to be that intense. Capping off our number 13 spot, we have Lightning Run at Kentucky Kingdom in Louisville. This ride is pretty underrated in my opinion. In fact, one of the most underrated rides I have ever been on. This ride feels like an RMC exactly for me, and you could tell when it comes to its camelbacks and its very sharp low to the ground elements. In my opinion, this is a mix between an RMC and Maverick at Cedar Point. My favorite part is the finale, which has some of the most intense and sharp airtime moments I've experienced on any ride ever. If I were to put this finale in a list of top 10 most intense airtime moments, it would definitely be in that list. The number 12 spot belongs to Maverick at Cedar Point. Now, when this came out, this was a very unique coaster, as it was one of the first Blitz-style coasters. It provides a set of magnetic launches, a lift launch, and man, the elements this ride provides are intense. I don't think there is a single element on this ride that feels lackluster, maybe besides those trims, but those don't really count in my list because, like I said, every other element, the airtime, the Stangle dives, even the second launch, and especially that first drop, they very much provide. At the number 11 spot, we go to another multi-launch coaster going down to Carowinds to talk about Copperhead Strike. This is my favorite coaster by Mock Rides, and for many reasons. One, the theming, the very diverse layout. You have some nice hang time in those inversions, and then some very nice RMC style airtime in those camelbacks. This has a very low to the ground setting, which I always enjoy, and the aesthetic of this ride wows me as well. And now, we get into my top 10. Starting the list off is Millennium Force at Cedar Point. Going back to Cedar Point, this has got to be one of my favorite roller coasters regardless of its actual layout. This ride is beautiful, and especially going down that first drop, looking at Lake Erie and Sandusky Bay as you are barreling down at 93 miles an hour, it is a very fun experience that you would always be able to cherish in your hearts. Going over those overbank turns, and I personally gray out most of the times I ride this. This ride has a very nice layout going into Cedar Point's Millennium Island, and every single overbank turn, every single airtime moment, and everything from the start to the finish of this ride, I think makes this ride what it is. Getting into some single digits, we are going to go to Six Flags Great Adventure to talk about Jersey Devil. This RMC Raptor, in my opinion, has got to be one of the most overhated and underrated coasters I have been on. This ride making my top 10, you could easily tell. From start to finish, I think this ride has non-stop pacing and airtime. I think that this ride is on par with many of the other RMCs I've ridden when it comes to its forces and its inversions. Its inversions pop off just as well, and something I love about this ride is its intense finale, if the trims are off, with some crazy up and down ejector airtime throughout that whole layout. For our number 8 spot, we go back to Kentucky to talk about Storm Chaser. This is an RMC that I would actually say runs very similar to Lightning Run, but this ride just has more, which is why I put it over. This ride has so many airtime moments, starting from that incredible camelback, going into this very wacky turnaround that banks you over and over again. I cannot mention this ride without mentioning its out of this world finale, consisting of multiple airtime moments, bank to the left, bank to the right, including a double down and a trick track double up. This ride will throw you everywhere, and is very similar to a few other rides that are coming up, including the number 7 spot, Twisted Timbers. I'll say it, this is just a longer Storm Chaser. Everything I said about Storm Chaser, I'm saying about this ride. The reason I put it on a higher spot is because it is much longer and provides even more airtime moments than Storm Chaser did. Instead of one big camelback, this ride is 3 in a row. For our number 6 spot, we go to Six Flags New England to talk about my favorite ride in the entire region. This is Superman the Ride, a 2000 Intamin hypercoaster, and this ride has one of the greatest layouts on any coaster ever. Starting with that first drop into an amazing group of camelbacks, I really can't describe how insane these airtime moments are until you truly experience them. You go over these hills, and every single one of them, well at least almost every single one of them, provides incredible flow-jector airtime. Add that with the beautiful setting over the river and its finale, it is an amazing, well-rounded experience that I hope stays here for years to come. And now, we get into our top 5, the best of the best. Number 5 is El Toro at Six Flags Great Adventure, another Six Flags airtime machine. This focuses on some of the strongest ejector airtime you will ever experience in your life. It has one of the greatest, most sustained first drops I've experienced on a ride, and it does not stop there. The airtime moments, including the camelbacks and that rolling Thunderhill, provide some crazy airtime that I still think about to this day compared to other rides. At the number 4 spot, we go down to Busch Gardens Tampa to talk about Iron Gwazi. This ride has a nice twister layout compared to some other RMCs, and I love this layout. You can see all of the elements twisting through each other, and the elements themselves are crazy as well. The overbank turn, the set of inversions this ride has, and my favorite, the absolutely crazy wave turn. Otherwise known as a twist and shout, this element wowed everyone upon release, and it wows me every single time I go on it. Now we reached the top 3, and it was really hard to determine what this list was going to be, but I decided to put Air Force 1 at the 3rd spot. This is because of a few reasons, but I think that number 3 is a great spot for this ride. It is one of the most well-rounded RMCs I've been on, coming with its quad down and its unique inversion collection, including that low-to-the-ground turnaround. This ride was built to thrill and amuse guests from all around, and I think it successfully did that. For our number 2 spot, we go down to Florida once again to talk about the one and the only Velocicoaster at Islands of Adventure. This ride has everything you want in a coaster. This ride has launches, airtime, positive Gs, and some of the craziest theming that you will find on a coaster this intense. The theming provides so much to this ride, and very similar to a lot of the other themed experiences, this ride is just that, a complete experience from when you walk into the queue to the very end. But there is a coaster I like more, and you probably knew it was coming, but I like to keep it here anyways. For number 1, we have the Steel Vengeance at Cedar Point. So, why is this coaster not dropped at all for me since 2018? Well, it's very simple. Airtime is my favorite thing of any coaster, and this ride has the most unique and biggest selection of airtime on any coaster I have ever been on. The thing I like about this ride the most is that it has so many different airtime moments, varying in intensity and style, and of course direction. And with its very long duration, you will get airtime after airtime after airtime. This coaster is everything I ask for in a coaster, and this is my top 50 as of right now. So let me know what you think in the comments below, let me know what you thought about the list, and let me know what your top 10 or even top 50 is, if you are interested. I will definitely want to comment. Once again, these are all just opinions, so be civil, and to others in the comments below as well. And until next time, this is Cedar Flags, and I'll see you all later.